So now we're going to speak about how we learn from a cognitive science point of view. There is no end to education. It is not that you read a book, pass an examination, and finish with education. The whole of life, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, is a process of learning. I really like this quote from Jiddu Krishnamurti, and I think it really encompasses the idea of a growth mindset and how important learning can be to a rich and fulfilling life. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to define and understand the concept of metacognition and its importance in the learning process. You'll be able to recognize the significance of feedback and active engagement in enhancing comprehension and retention of information. You'll be able to discuss the role of attention in alerting, filtering, and emphasizing relevant information during learning. And you'll be able to talk about different perspectives on sleep and how that is involved with memory and consolidation of information. So what is learning? Well, from a cognitive science point of view, learning is the process by which our experiences lead to long-lasting new knowledge or behavior. And today we're going to be speaking a lot about the factors that encourage human learning. And later in the course, I hope we'll be able to compare and contrast these to try and understand where artificial intelligence and machine learning is in comparison with human learning. So what is the most effective strategy to improve learning? Well, the Education Endowment Foundation is this wonderful organisation based here in the UK that does very high quality meta-analyses of educational studies. And they found that of all of the strategies implemented that they've studied so far, learning to learn, or metacognition, has the highest impact. They found that by teaching metacognition and self-regulation strategies in school, that could lead to the equivalent of 7 months of additional instruction. So, what is metacognition? Well, it's about identifying specific strategies for planning, monitoring, and evaluating your own learning. So, through this process, you want to be able to develop a repertoire of strategies to choose from, and also develop the skills to select the most suitable strategy for a given learning task. And about this other component, self-regulated learning, well, that actually contains 3 different aspects. Cognition itself, which is the mental processes for knowing, understanding, and learning information. Metacognition, which we talked about as learning to learn. And also the idea of motivation and being able to understand your own willingness to engage these other skills. So learning to learn is a new topic in AI and machine learning, but I'm hoping you'll also find it useful to learn a little bit about how effective learning happens, and you might be able to use this in your own studies. Another of the most effective ways to accelerate learning is through feedback. So there's a lot of evidence now that learning is faster in students when we receive quick and detailed error feedback. And this detailed error feedback really seems to have parallels with the concept in machine learning of supervised learning. One way to make the most of this learning from feedback is to regularly test your knowledge in a low stakes environment. One way to do this that is very effective is a practice known as retrieval practice. This can be, for example, the use of flashcards to regularly test your memory and understanding of concepts. One of the reasons this works so well is because testing regularly allows your attention to be focused on the weaker areas and the bits that you don't remember or understand so well. However, most students, when they're asked to study for an exam, they tend to forego this testing or retrieval practice strategy and instead just read over and over the notes again. However, this is shown to be generally a lot less effective at increasing retention and understanding. However, the type of feedback is also crucial. If you receive harsh or overly negative feedback, that can actually impair learning. We don't learn well when we're under extremely high stress or feeling a lot of anxiety. Please pause the video and answer this first question on Blackboard. Okay, welcome back. And now we are going to see a short video.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take all. It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you? Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts and precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So this is really quite an amazing example of a phenomenon called inattentional blindness. This was an ad by Transport for London. I believe they were warning against the dangers of focusing on other things, perhaps your telephone while you were driving or cycling. But it's really based on some beautiful research by Daniel Simons and colleagues. So I suggest you go and check out some of their really fun examples too. And this really demonstrates how nicely attention can make us completely blind to things that were perfectly available to us in our sensory environment. But we really don't see what's going on unless we're focused. And if we don't see what's going on, we're not going to learn that information. So attention is the mechanism by which the brain selects and enhances relevant information while filtering out distractions. And we have different major attention systems, and this is according to the esteemed cognitive scientist, neuroscientist Michael Posner. One system is to alert us that we generally should be alert and pay attention right now. Another is to orient our focus, to focus on a particular thing and not something else. And this can also help us increase the detail with which we experience some aspect of the world. There's also executive attention, which is perhaps not something that in everyday language we call attention, but this is where we essentially select which of the many different mental processes we should be doing right now in favor of others. But there's also something that is very important for humans, and indeed very important for education, which is shared attention, or paying attention to other people's attention. And there's lots of evidence that this accelerates learning, particularly in young children, but probably in all humans. You can see, if you go again to the Education Endowment Foundation website, that some of the most effective teaching interventions involved social interactions and shared attention, such as collaborative learning and peer tutoring. So I think this is a potentially important aspect of how humans learn that is not really studied in general in artificial intelligence. Another extremely effective way to increase your learning and teach more effectively is through active engagement. And active engagement encompasses a whole load of different techniques, but it's really to contrast with a kind of passive learning. Passive learning is when, for example, you sit in a lecture and you listen, but you don't actually have to do anything. And in fact, it's in those kind of situations, it's very likely that your attention will drop at some point. So one aspect of active engagement is proposing and testing your own hypotheses when you're trying to learn something. So according to this, to learn, our brain must first form a kind of mental model or understanding of the world and the subject it's trying to learn, and then compare its predictions to the new information it receives. So this requires attention, it also requires effort, actively testing out different hypotheses about how things work, and then also reflection on how your different tests panned out and whether you should update on your beliefs. Along these lines, there's evidence from the educational literature that deeper thinking leads to better memory. So the psychologist Rodinger said, for example, that requiring students to engage more cognitive effort often leads to enhanced retention. So I'll provide the original article with evidence to support that at the end of the lecture. And in fact, in this meta-analysis by Freeman and al., they showed that across different STEM disciplines, so that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, active engagement approaches lead to more understanding, higher test scores, and fewer students failing. You can see here is the overall normalized test score performance, and you can see that for each of the subjects, the performance for active engagement approaches is above the average for lectures shown in the red dotted line, and the failure rate it decreases also for each different subject compared to the lectures in the red line. So I think now that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that people learn better when they're trying to actively get involved, test out different ideas rather than passively receiving information. So now please pause the video again and go back to the blackboard and ask, or rather answer the second question. And now we're going to hear a interesting quote from the wonderful Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Scientists, they're always turning over rocks and plucking petals off of flowers. They're always doing things that by and large are destructive. And that's what exploration kind of is. If you take stuff apart, whether or not you know how to put it back together. This is what kids do. An adult scientist is a kid who never grew up. That's what an adult scientist does. So what happens at home is the kid reaches in the refrigerator, pulls out an egg, and starts juggling it. What's the first thing you do as a parent? Stop playing with the egg. It could break. Put it back. Excuse me, this is an experiment in the material strength of... Let the kid find out that when it drops, it breaks. This is a physics experiment. Rapidly turned into a biology experiment, okay? The yolk oozes out. You say, hey, that becomes a chickie one day, okay? Wait, how does this gooey yolk become a chicken? Well, that's biology. Check that out.
So this is a wonderful, engaging way of showing how important curiosity is for developing young minds and even older minds. Neil deGrasse Tyson points out there how important curiosity is, not just for children but also for scientists, and it can be a real drive to learn. So what is curiosity? Well, curiosity is what happens when we detect a gap between what we know now and what we would like to know. And it's really driven by a kind of intrinsic value in acquiring information. There's evidence that greater curiosity is associated with greater academic achievement too. So I think that going after and learning stuff that you enjoy, that you're curious about, is a really important way to learn better and more effectively. At the moment in AI and machine learning, this idea of curiosity is really not so widespread, although there is some very interesting work by Udair and colleagues in robots, which we will hopefully cover in a later lecture. Another aspect of active engagement is laughter and humor. So what is a laughter from a kind of a cognitive science point of view? Well, we laugh and we find things funny when we discover that one of our assumptions about how things work is completely wrong, and this forces us to change our mental model. There's actually evidence also to show that laughter increases curiosity and improves subsequent memory. Well, the philosopher Dan Dennett in the United States says that laughter is actually a contagious social response that spreads as we draw each other's attention to unexpected pieces of information. So laughter may actually be a very effective way to increase learning and spread it rapidly across a group of people. Again, here we see a value in a social aspect of learning for humans that is really not a part of regular AI machine learning research. So please turn again to Blackboard and take the third question in the quiz. Now we're going to move on to consolidation of information. And consolidation is the process of a change from slow, conscious, effortful processing to fast, unconscious, or automatic expertise. Consolidation is also generally a way in which memories become more long-lasting, but also change over time. A lot of this consolidation occurs during sleep, and generally more sleep is related to stronger memories and better generalization. So sleep not only strengthens existing knowledge, but also inspires new insights. Here we can see a result from an experiment by Wagner and colleagues, where they got participants to do a cognitive task that had a hidden shortcut, and they got them to do this after a gap, and during that gap, if the participants slept, they were more than twice as likely to have insight into and discover the shortcut compared to people who did not sleep, or compared to people who did sleep but were not given instructions originally. So this shows the value both of scaffolding learning by beginning with a certain framework in which to learn, but also how important sleep can be for putting together different ideas from the day and coming up with insights. There's another interesting idea about sleep, which is that when we dream, things seem to occur much more rapidly than in real life. And dreams are also not exact replays of what occurred during the day, but they tend to be somehow related to what we found. Taking a AI machine learning point of view on this, it's possible that dreams could be a kind of a fabricated data that our brain makes up from putting together different aspects of its internal store, so that the brain can then use that training data to train more effectively, to act better during the real day. So, to recap this video, learning is the process by which experiences lead to long-lasting new knowledge or behavior, and some of the most effective ways to promote human learning include learning about learning, high quality and rapid feedback. You can do this yourself with retrieval practice and flashcards. Active engagement, which includes proposing and testing your own hypotheses as you learn. Being curious about what you learn and following that curiosity. Using humor, laughing, enjoying the material and sharing with others. Paying attention to what you want to learn. And generally learning socially with other people, teaching, discussing, listening, and so on. And sleeping well is a very important final ingredient for consolidating that information and perhaps generating insights. So, if you're still curious and want to learn more about any of the things we discussed today, here is a list of many different references. Be quite a lot to read all of it, although they're all great books and articles. But I suggest maybe if you're still curious, why don't you select one topic and see where your curiosity leads you. Thank you. And next we're going to learn about learning and memory from a neuroscience perspective.